podcast for the Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology. Welcome to the show, and if you've been a longtime listener, welcome back to the show. As usual, I'm your host, Sam Mickey, and often what we do here is have interviews with different people working in or around the field of religion and ecology, but sometimes I also like to just give a little book review to talk about a book, new or old, that's relevant to the field. So today I want to talk about a book that just came out pretty recently at the end of 2024, and it's by Robin Wall Kimmerer, The Serviceberry: Abundance and Reciprocity in the Natural World. And so, like I said, it came out at the end of 2024. It's based on a smaller piece she wrote for Emergence magazine, which is a wonderful magazine. Highly recommend it if you're not familiar with it. And it's an online magazine, and so easily accessible. And it's about abundance and reciprocity in the natural world, especially about the idea of a gift economy, which is really hopeful. A lot of people in the recent years, recent decades, have really worried about the state of the global economy, oriented toward commoditization, resource extraction. There's problems. Some people really locate the source of our environmental crisis in our very disruptive economy. So Kimmerer here offers a really hopeful and inspiring alternative in the form of a gift economy. So I want to talk a little bit about the book, but if you're unfamiliar with Kimmerer's work, her previous book, Braiding Sweetgrass, was immensely successful and highly acclaimed. And then before that, there was Gathering Moss, which is another beautiful book. So I highly recommend all of her work. And if you're unfamiliar with it, not only is it very hopeful and inspiring and very articulate and expansive in its erudition, but also just simply beautifully written. So to indicate that, I figured instead of just giving a normal review where I just talk about the book, figured I'd let her speak for herself a little. So I'm just going to read you the first few pages, and then we'll chat more about what this book is all about. The cool breath of evening slips off the wooded hills, displacing the heat of the day, and with it come the birds, as eager for the cool as I am. They arrive in a flock of calls that sound like laughter, and I have to laugh back with the same delight. They are all around me, cedar waxwings and catbirds, and a flash of bluebird iridescence. I've never felt such kinship to my namesake, Robin, as in this moment, when we are both stuffing our mouths with berries and chortling with happiness. The bushes are laden with fat clusters of red, blue, and wine purple in every stage of ripeness. So many, you can pick them by the handful. I'm glad I have a pail, and it's getting pretty heavy. The birds carry their berries in the buckets of their bellies, and wonder if they'll be able to fly off with so much cargo. The abundance of berries feels like a pure gift from the land. I've not earned, paid for, nor labored for them. There's no mathematics of worthiness that reckons I deserve them in any way, and yet here they are, along with the sun and the air and the birds and the rain, gathering in towers of cumulonimbi, a distant storm building. You could call them natural resources or ecosystem services, but the robins and I know them as gifts. We both sing gratitude with our mouths full. Part of my delight comes from their unexpected presence. I never imagined that I could pick them here. The local native service berries, Amelanchier arborea, have small hard fruits, which tend toward dryness, and only once in a while is there a tree with sweet offerings. The bounty in my bucket today is a western species known as Saskatoons, planted by my farmer neighbors, Polly and Ed. This is their first bearing year, and they produce berries with an enthusiasm that matches my own. Saskatoon, Juneberry, Shadbush, Shadblow, Sugarplum, Sarvis, Serviceberry, these are among the many names for Amelanchier. Ethnobotanists know that the more names a plant has, the greater its cultural importance. The tree is beloved for its fruits, for its medicinal use, and for the early froth of flowers that whiten woodland edges at the first hint of spring. Serviceberry is known as a calendar plant. So faithful is it to seasonal weather patterns. Its bloom is a sign that the ground has thawed. In this folklore, this was the time that mountain roads became passable for circuit preachers who arrived to conduct church services. It is also a reliable indicator to fisherfolk that the shad are running upstream. Or at least it was back in the day, when rivers were clear and free enough to support the spawning of shad. Calendar plants like serviceberry are important for synchronizing the seasonal rounds of traditional indigenous people, who move in an annual cycle through their homelands to where the foods are ready. Instead of changing the land to suit their convenience, they changed themselves. Eating with the seasons is a way of honoring abundance, by going to meet it when and where it arrives. A world of produce warehouses and grocery stores enables the practice of having what you want when you want it. We force the food to come to us, at considerable financial and ecological costs, rather than following the practice of taking what has been given to us, each in its own time. These service berries were not coerced, and their carbon footprint is nothing. Maybe that's why they taste so good. They come only this time of year, these ephemeral sips of summer, without the aftertaste of harm. The name serviceberry comes not from its service, but from a very old version of its rose family name, sorbus, which became sarvis and hence service. While the name did not derive from its benefits, the plant does provide myriad goods and services, not only to humans, but to many other citizens. It supports biodiversity. Shadbush is a preferred browse of deer and moose, a vital source of early pollen for newly emerging insects, and host to a suite of butterfly larvae, like tiger swallowtails, viceroys, admirables, and hairstreaks, and berry-feasting birds who rely on those calories in breeding season. Human people too rely on those calories, especially in traditional indigenous food practices. Service berries were a critical ingredient in the making of pemmican. The dried berries, along with dried venison or bison, were pounded to a fine powder, bound with rendered fat, and solidified into the original energy bars. This highly concentrated preserved food provided full nutritional sustenance through seasons of hunger. It was easily transportable and could be cached or carried. Pemmican became part of the traditional trade economy, a sophisticated local and transcontinental network that distributed vital materials across ecosystems and cultures. Surplus serviceberry calories could be exchanged for other goods not locally available. Service berries are part of indigenous foodways wherever they grow. I'm a member of the Potawatomi Nation, which is one of the Anishinaabe peoples of the Great Lakes region. I've had the privilege of eating syrupy purple compotes of service berries at traditional feasts, which have primed my taste buds and my memories of this ancestral food. So that's the first few pages, and I'm sure if you heard Robin read it, she'd be more mellifluous and articulate because these are her words after all. But I just want to introduce that because it really highlights exactly what she's talking about, this kind of experiential contact with service berries as a gift from the land, a gift that's distributed not just to humans, but to all kinds of beings that inhabit that land. And that as a gift, it is experienced as something to be grateful for, and also as a gift. It's not a commodity that has an intense ecological footprint, and it doesn't cost anything. So pretty special. It's all about sharing, right? Like, what is a gift economy? It's when we share, we respect the land and one another, and there's a sense of gratitude for what you're given, and there's a sense of giving back. And so reciprocity is a huge theme throughout this book. It's a very short book, I should also add, coming in at just around 100 pages. So it's a very quick read compared to something like Brainy Sweetgrass, which was much longer. So if you haven't gotten into Kimmerer's work before, this is a good intro. And if you also already know her work, this does add more nuance and texture and detail to what she's presented before. So it's not just repetitive or something. So really important. And if you're not familiar with the idea of a gift economy, I highly recommend looking into it because it's one of those things that if you're familiar with like the work of Garrett Hardin with his essay on the tragedy of the commons, there's been this mistaken perception that gift economies that are based on trust and reciprocity and gratitude will never work. And then it turns out they can totally work. As Kimmerer shows, they've worked historically in indigenous contexts. So you might know the economist Eleanor Ostrom. She was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in economics, and it was precisely for her research into basically debunking the Garrett Hardin thesis of the tragedy of the commons and providing a lot of ethnographic evidence that a lot of small communities are able to have relationships of trust and reciprocity with the land instead of treating land like resources, commodities, or even ecosystem services, but treating land as a gift, right? That it isn't that land belongs to us, it's that we belong to the land in relationships of reciprocity and gratitude. One of the key points here is that a gift is not a bilateral exchange, right? It's not just like I give you something and then you give me something back, which I think a lot of people experience at holidays, like birthdays or something. If somebody gives me a gift for my birthday, I feel compelled I better give them a gift for their birthday. And it becomes just a matter of this kind of bilateral exchange. And then once you give me something back after I've given you something, the exchange is over. But gifts are never over. It's this more diffuse, deferred sort of giving where you keep giving and giving back and overflowing with gratitude. And so I'll read a small passage that makes that point, the difference between a gift and a commodity that is exchanged. In a Serviceberry economy, I accept the gift from the tree and then spread that gift around, with a dish of berries to my neighbor, who makes a pie to share with his friend, who feels so wealthy in food and friendship that he volunteers at the food pantry. You know how it goes. In contrast, if I were to buy a basket of berries in a market economy, the relationship ends with the exchange of money. Once I hand over my credit card, I have no further exchange with the clerk or the store. We're done. I own these berries now, and I can do with them as I like. The clerk, the corporation, and I, the customer, have a strictly material transaction. There's no making of community, only a trading of commodities. Think of how strange but wonderful it would be if you met the clerk on the street and they asked for your recipe for Serviceberry pie. That would be out of bounds. But if those berries were a gift, you'd probably still be chatting, right? So that's the whole thing. The gift means that you're going to keep talking about it. So if somebody gives me a gift of Serviceberries, and I might ask them, what's your favorite recipe? Then they might ask me what my favorite recipe is. And like, by the way, what do you think goes really well with a Serviceberry pie? Then we might start talking about other dishes. And then we might start talking about our personal preferences for different foods. And that might mean we start talking about our families or our friends. And you just keep on talking. There's something about material exchanges, the bilateral exchange in a market economy, where you stop talking. And in fact, like she says, it's out of bounds to talk. If you saw, if the clerk saw you or you saw the clerk just walking down the street, you wouldn't be like, hey, remember those service berries I bought? They'd be like, why are you talking to me? I'm not at work right now. That's inappropriate. So stark contrast between a market economy and a gift economy. And yet, I should point out that's complicated a little bit more than Kimmerer is letting on here. Because she's trying to make a clear distinction, and so she's not trying to make it all ambiguous. So good, but also worth noting that it is possible to buy something from a store and then go take it to a friend's place where it becomes part of a gift economy. I mean, I've done this personally because I don't grow a lot of my own food. I have tried, believe me, and I'm pretty bad at it. And part of that's I'm in an apartment, don't have a lot of land to do it and stuff like that, and other excuses. But I have some friends on the West Coast in Northern California who have farms. And so there's a whole community of farms. And a lot of times, especially during the summer, people would get together for community dinners where a handful of people from each of these farms all come together and have this really amazing feast. And there's no fee for entry. There's no expectation of bringing something. And if you don't bring something, they're not expecting you to then pay them back later. It really is a good example of a gift economy. But sometimes I can buy something from the grocery store, or maybe from a farmer's market more ideally, and then bring it to them. And then it enters into an exchange of gift and isn't just reducible to a market economy. This is a complicated problem. And a good person to look at for this, if you're looking for a philosophical explanation of this ambiguity between a gift and a bilateral exchange, how sometimes a bilateral exchange can move into a gift, and conversely, sometimes a gift can move into bilateral exchange. Like with the birthday gift example I gave earlier, where you think it's a gift, but really it becomes an obligation to give back for the next person's birthday. So you thought it was a gift, but was it really a gift, or was it a bilateral exchange after all? So anyway, the French philosopher Jacques Derrida, who anybody who knows my work knows I care a lot about, the person who coined the term deconstruction, which is a relatively infamous sort of approach to philosophy and to theoretical discussions, but it's actually very generative and full of the promise of freedom and justice and indeed the gift. And Derrida writes a lot about the gift in varieties of contexts. One of them is his book, The Gift of Death, and which is actually a lot more optimistic and hopeful than it might sound when you throw death in the title. But his point is that the gift is somehow possible because it's impossible. And so he kind of finds that wiggle room of that ambiguity of like, even if you have a gift economy, there might still be that tendency for somebody to think, you know what, you don't contribute as much as other people, and we'd like you to contribute a little bit more to our gift giving. And so then you feel that sense of, oh, it's not just about abundant gift giving. Sometimes it is about exchange. Again, reciprocity. There is the sense that you have to give back, but the giving back isn't just final. And it's not about owning something. It's about distributing it with a network of relations, right? But it is kind of ambiguous. So in a way, gifts are impossible. But for Derrida, that doesn't mean the gift economy can't happen. It means that it happens precisely as a kind of miracle. Isn't that what we mean when we say something's impossible? Is that when it happens, it's this amazing eruption of something new and special into a world that can easily fall into commodities, resource management, ecosystem services, and we lose the sense of the gift. So gifts, they're entirely possible, but only when we treat them as the special experience that they are, the special event they are. For Derrida, a gift is an event that erupts into our horizon of possibility and shows us that there's more than what we normally think is possible. So the possibility of the gift is the possibility of it being impossible. And so, yes, sorry for paradoxical language, but of course that's the nature of philosophy, is to dwell in paradoxes and try to resolve those paradoxes with a kind of higher order experience. That's, what is called dialectics for people like Socrates or Hegel. And so I just like to point that out because otherwise I feel like sometimes the emphasis on how the gift economy is so different than a market economy, people like myself who are deeply embroiled in a market economy might feel like, well, then there's no way out. How am I supposed to get out of a market economy and into a gift economy? And there's an irony like that, right? When you're trying to be something that you are not yet, then you feel like you might be ironic, maybe even being hypocritical. Like, here am I advocating for a gift economy when, for the most part, most of what I do in my economic situation is very much a market economy. I mean, it's hard to do otherwise living in a capitalist society. And so I think Derrida's work points out the fact that that ambiguity isn't a bad thing. And being complicit in the market economy doesn't mean that you can't also foster the emergence of a gift economy. They both can happen. To some extent, that is the nature of the gift, that no matter how much you're focusing on a gift economy, it's still kind of haunted by the possibility of a bilateral exchange, a market exchange. And conversely, no matter how much you're embroiled in a market economy, there's always the possibility of the impossible, the possibility that the gift will emerge even in a market context of bilateral exchange. So anyway, I apologize for that digression for people who don't like philosophy and or Jacques Derrida. But I think it's an important point because, again, I know that for somebody like Robin Kimmerer, she wants this to be a source of hope, not a source of feeling trapped. And so we aren't trapped in a market economy. There's always the impossibility of the impossible, the possibility of the emergence of the gift, even within the very hostile conditions of a market economy. And then you might say, if you're cynical, like, okay, well, these are fancy words, easy to always accuse an author of just being full of fancy words. And but no, there's actually a little bit more to it. So let me just read a tiny bit more. This is toward the end of the book. Not just, no, there's no spoilers. I already spoiled it. It's about the gift economy. So, it's just about the ride you take along the way and the wonderful examples she gives along the way. Regenerative economies that reciprocate the gift are the only path forward. To replenish the possibility of mutual flourishing for birds and berries and people, we need an economy that shares the gifts of the earth, following the lead of our oldest teachers, the plants. They invite us all into the circle to give our human gifts in return for all we are given. How will we answer? And here's how she answers. One of the things that's really special about this book is that it's an exemplification of a gift economy. She's not just talking about it, she is in fact doing it. Which again, I think is one of the most common kind of cynical remarks people have about academics or scholars or writers is that, oh, we're just talking about it, why aren't you doing it? Why don't you put your money where your mouth is? Which is a bad market metaphor, I suppose. But here's a nice point here. The author's advance payments from this book, The Serviceberry, about the gift economy of the natural world, will be donated as a reciprocal gift back to the land for land protection, restoration, and justice in support of healing land and people. In the spirit of the reciprocal gift economy, you might consider how you can reciprocate the gifts of the earth in your own way, whatever your currency of reciprocity is, be it money, time, energy, political action, art, science, education, planting, community action, restoration, acts of care, large or small. All are needed in these urgent times. You are invited to become a member of the gift economy on behalf of people and the planet. So, a wonderful little book. And again, I pointed out that ambiguity that sometimes even market relations can facilitate gift relations. And she pointed that out there in that last little passage, that even if one of your things that you can contribute is money, that can still be something that can contribute to gift. So even in her own work, even though she makes that kind of stark difference between bilateral exchange and gift exchange, she does indicate in a few spots there that sometimes market relations can move into gift relations. So they don't have to be mutually exclusive, which is so hopeful for folks living in market economies, that market economies do have the possibility to make something totally impossible happen, which is to dismantle market economies and move toward a gift economy where we have relationships of reciprocity and gratitude for all that we're given. So, wonderful book, highly recommend it, and even if you are already familiar with Robin Kimmerer's wonderful work. So, I'll leave it there for now, and we'll be back again with more conversations for you soon. In the meantime, take care, be well.